When people hear the word sin, they usually think of religion, rules, guilt, control. It sounds outdated, maybe even manipulative. But what if sin isn't primarily about rule breaking? What if it's about something deeper, something woven into the structure of reality itself? To understand sin, we have to step away from caricatures and ask a more fundamental question. What does the word actually mean? In the biblical languages, the word most often translated as sin literally means to miss the mark. Imagine an archer aiming at a target. The goal is precision, alignment with the center. To sin is to aim and fall short. Notice what that implies. Sin isn't just rebellion, it isn't just breaking arbitrary commands, it's misalignment. It's a failure to live in accordance with the good we were made for. That's a very different picture than many people assume. In classical Christian thought, sin isn't merely about behavior, it's about disorder. Human beings were created with a structure, a moral and relational design. We were meant to love what is truly good most of all, and not let temporary desires take control, to value truth over self-deception, to pursue justice over domination, to align desire with what is good. Sin happens when that order inverts, when pride overtakes humility, when self-interest overrides love, when lower desires rule over higher goods. It's not simply crime, it's distortion. And distortion doesn't only affect isolated actions, it fractures relationships. Sin disrupts our relationship with God because it rejects the source of the good. It disrupts our relationship with others because disordered love becomes exploitation, envy, resentment. And it disrupts us internally because when our desires are misaligned, we become divided within ourselves. We know this experience. We want what harms us. We justify what we know isn't right. We feel the tension between who we are and who we should be. Sin names that fracture. But here's something important. The concept of sin only makes sense if there is an objective moral standard. If morality is simply a product of biology, culture, and social conditioning, then nothing is truly sinful. There are only behaviors that societies happen to discourage. Under strict naturalism, morality becomes adaptive preference. Helpful for survival, perhaps, but not binding in any ultimate sense. Yet most of us don't experience morality that way. When we encounter injustice, we don't merely say, "I dislike that." We say, "That is wrong." Not inconvenient, not unfashionable, wrong. That language assumes something. It assumes there is a real moral order, something independent of personal opinion. And if there is a real moral order, then deviation from it isn't just unfortunate, it's significant. That's where sin becomes a philosophical concept, not just a religious one. It describes deviation from an objective good. And this also explains why the idea of sin is uncomfortable in modern culture. Because sin implies accountability. It suggests that we are not the authors of moral reality. We don't define good and evil into existence. We discover them. And if moral reality is discovered rather than invented, then we are measured by something beyond ourselves. That challenges autonomy. But notice something else. Even in a culture that rejects the word sin, the moral vocabulary remains. We speak constantly about oppression, corruption, injustice, abuse, harm. The categories haven't disappeared. Only the grounding has shifted. Christian thought has long described sin not as the absence of rules, but as the turning of the heart inward upon itself. Love curved inward. Self-elevated above the good. That's why sin isn't just about what we do. It's about what we love most. And when the highest good is replaced with lesser goods, everything else becomes disordered. So, what is sin? It is missing the mark of the good. It is relational rupture. It is moral disorder. It is deviation from an objective moral reality. But here is something equally important. A diagnosis only matters if healing is possible. In the biblical story, sin is never the final word. The same narrative that names disorder also speaks of restoration. If there is a moral order, and if we have deviated from it, then reconciliation becomes meaningful. Without a real moral standard, forgiveness is sentiment. With a real moral standard, forgiveness is profound. So the deeper question isn't simply, do I like the word sin? The deeper question is there a moral reality that exists independent of us? Because if there is, then sin isn't about control. It's about alignment with what is truly good. And if we sense that fracture within ourselves, that tension between who we are and who we ought to be, then perhaps the concept of sin isn't primitive. Perhaps it's perceptive. And understanding it may be the beginning of understanding ourselves.